Coffee. Boy, I should really wake up at least 20 minutes before this call so I can be semi-coherent. It's getting bad. Meeting minutes in the chat. Oh, nice. Thank you, Naveen. It's perfect. Actually, please, if you're looking for the meeting minutes, please see Naveen's comment, not mine. I think mine is just another link to the meeting itself. So, yeah, clearly Naveen has been awake for a while, not me. All right. Okay, good deal. Well, we're just 3 minutes after. I know there's a I know that there's a few different folks who are going to join today, and so I'm anticipating a couple of their topics. If you're on the call, go ahead and slap in your name in the attendee list. And while we wait for a couple of others to join, just a reminder of a couple things. One, we record these calls and post them on YouTube, so just be aware. And so you can watch them at your for your viewing pleasure later. Two is that in this meeting, we have a bunch of meetings every week. This one is intended to follow the format a little bit like a little bit of a daily stand-up, although I'll acknowledge that anytime someone's giving an update, that it's going to take a little bit longer than 60 seconds, than 2 minutes. We'll probably end up talking about that thing for a little while. So, but the point is, this call is much more about getting me to shut up and hearing from everyone else. So, last thing, I think, before we sort of get underway with a couple of topics and updates, and that is to say, as a ritual and sort of rite of passage, anyone who joins a given call for the first time gets to introduce themselves and get to know others here. So, Satya, this might be your first time on this call. So, take a moment, if you would, to just say hi and introduce.
Hi, hello.
Hey, Satya, hey. And thanks for being here today. This is great. Just to help Nikhil and Abishek and Naveen and the others that are on the call get familiar with you, say a bit about your current focus, or kind of what you've been doing, what you're excited about, how you got here.
Actually, I get to know about this community in the GitHub, and there are a lot of new technology that I can learn here. So basically, this is why I joined.
Oh, that's okay.
Learning new stuff.
Totally. Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's it makes me feel good because I can't tell you, we curated the GitHub repositories quite a bit and put in the topics that we're trying to focus on, and yeah, that's nice. Satya, I think you just popped in very recently, so I don't know if you've had a chance to run. Well, we have a few different projects, but the biggest one is Meshery. I don't know. Have you had a chance to run Meshery as a user?
Yes. I ran this in my local setup yesterday with Docker.
Yeah.
I'm
Any
able to run.
okay, any hiccups? Any snags? Any like rough patches that you ran into? Things that were confusing or
For running the Meshery, I use the Docker. Simply run two commands, and I will to set up this and go to the port. I forget the port and go to the localhost and port number. I will able to see the Meshery environment.
nice. Okay. That's that's good. That because that's by design. That's two commands and boom, bam, you're there. As a matter of fact,
Yes, yes.
yeah, depending upon, there's actually, I don't know if you believe this, there's actually a way in which you can run just one command and it'll bring you all the way into your, it'll download and install Meshery, run it, and then bring you into your browser, which
Yes, yes, yes.
question for you though, this is kind of an important piece of feedback because it's something that I struggle with, and that is after you brought up localhost 9081, and after you were inside of Meshery,
Hmm.
were you did uh, hmm, were you already running a Kubernetes instance? Like, did you already have a connection to Kubernetes somewhere?
No, no.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious if you would, if you could do this for me. Meshery doesn't have to interact with Kubernetes, but it likes to, or it will if Kubernetes is in the environment. And I'm curious about your experience after you have installed Kubernetes somewhere, whether that's on your local machine or it's a remote machine. And if you haven't done that before, then welcome to the community. We'll help you do that. But if but my question is, after you have access to a Kubernetes system, which it can be just a super small, lightweight install on your local machine, that's fine. I would like to know if when you pull up the Meshery's user interface, the web-based interface, the question is, does it automatically connect to Kubernetes? And it should, is the thing.
Actually, I don't know where it is connected or not. I actually run the setup and log in with my account, and the screen, the environment setup is running. So I thought it is running well. I don't know whether it is connected to Kubernetes or not. I actually not knowledge of it.
Sure,
Kubernetes.
sure. What operating system are you running?
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Okay. Yeah. So, Nikhil and Naveen, do you guys, when you guys run your Kubernetes instances, are you guys using kubeadm?
I use Minikube.
Minikube.
Same here.
Got you. Okay. So Satya, you kind of one of those next steps to take with Meshery is probably running a local instance of Kubernetes, and it's pretty easy to do with a tool called Minikube. And if you end up going to the Meshery documentation, it should be, you should find that it's just a couple of steps. It's got a link to Minikube, and you download it and say, I don't know, I forget what you even say, Minikube start or something. It's fairly straightforward. So, but my question is, let me show you this. So I guess while I'm showing you this, Satya, for the other folks in the call, actually, Abishek, I'm curious for you as well. Like, check when you run Meshery.
I have tried to set it up in local, and
I had run it with my local Minikube.
All right, then. Okay, then this is a good question. So does Meshery? I'm going to stop. I'm going to present my whole screen, I think.
Hi, Lee.
Hey, Shivai. Hey, good question for all of you guys, because this is something that I don't know if it's plaguing just me and something specific to my environment. But so right now, I just started Meshery, and we've actually talked about this on the call before. But I just started Meshery, and I have Kubernetes running in my environment. I'm using Docker Desktop, which is fine. There's no difference. If I go over to the command line and run a kubectl command, I query Kubernetes successfully. So there's just really not much going on. I guess I'm running Istio in my system. But so the question for Arip and for others is, or I guess the statement is, my Meshery instance is not automatically connecting to the available Kubernetes cluster that my user has access to, but it should be auto connecting. What's your experience here? Do you have to go initialize your connection to Kubernetes manually?
Yes, I was when I was trying it, I was doing manually. I guess. It wasn't important automatically, but I'm not sure about others. Others facing the same thing.
When I build it locally, like through make run, then I guess it works. Like I don't have to specify the config again and again.
Okay.
But not I have not tested with Meshery CTL.
Okay. Who else? Who else runs it? Or what are you guys' other experiences?
Yeah, for me too, on using HTTPL, it doesn't get connected on its own. I need to add the config file. And after adding it for the MeshCTL start localhost 9081, then when I do a run UI dev for the 3000 port, it gets detected automatically. So I guess it gets recognized after adding it to the MeshCTL.
All right. We may have to put out a bounty on this bug then, because it affects every user that comes into the system, and it's disappointing. It's not the best experience because users generally don't like if I disconnect my Kubernetes instance here, and when they load up Meshery, it'll look like this, and they're gonna come in. They're not gonna be guided to do anything. It's just gonna say not connected to Kubernetes. They're gonna say, okay, well, what can I do? Click on things. They're not gonna work because the adapters aren't gonna get connected because we've got some other poor logic in Meshery that really expects to have a Kubernetes connection before it's using the adapters, which isn't the best experience. I mean, so there's a dependency here. And if we're not auto discovering the user's kube config, and we don't even have a button to configure Kubernetes, they're going to fumble. There's no doubt the clicking is going to happen between here with a nasty sign, or which, by the way, that's the term for this. It's not a toaster notification. It's a nasty sign. Or they're going to click here. Nothing's going to happen. They're going to start to rage click on Meshery before they even get going. Maybe they'll hit this, configures, okay. Maybe they'll hit this. There's not going to be anything in return. It's just, oof. We went from awesome, slick installation, single command download, run, pull up the UI, to plopping them into an interface that they're going to have to start clicking around and just discovering what to do next. So who'd like to take this on? Who wants to save the day, I guess? And we have an unanswered question that we didn't get back to Nitish on. Yeah. So Nitish, I think if you're on now, yep, you're tracking well that Docker or Meshery when run as a Docker Compose application or when run as a container, Docker container on your local system, it does mount the user's home folder. I don't think it mounts the whole folder. It mounts specifically a couple of paths, but one of those being the cube, the user's local cube folder, such that then it can read. It's a read-only mount to read in that user's local cube config. Meshery then parses the cube config and just makes the assumption that the current context is the desired cluster that the user wants Meshery to interact with. And that's, 90% of the time, that's what they want to do. The other 10% of the time, they can come back, they can come in and load up their cube config and choose a different context name from here. So, any takers on this? And I'm not offering. Abishek, yeah?
Yeah, so I was already working on one of the issues. Basically, I picked up my first issue. So I'm expecting that to finish it by 1 or 2 days. So maybe post that I can pick this up.
Nice. Yeah, please. That would be lovely. It's been an outstanding issue for way too long. It's I might have to go back in time and tell you guys how many users have had this bad experience, or rather, it's not a bad experience. It's right. Upsetting because we've had such a smooth and like this is what should happen. They should land in here, and they've got colorized buttons. They've got things connected. I'm sure some people are kind of wondering, like, I'm sure we haven't done a user study yet, but I suspect. Well, first of all, this is not the dashboard that we want to show people. This is not a dashboard that tells you about your service mesh environment and the services that are running and their health and their workloads and how your meshes are configured, and etc. It's not. This is the best that we could do given what we had at the time. What this is your Meshery health panel, more or less, or your Meshery configuration panel. This is really much more of the settings, what you will find inside of settings, but a bit of Meshery health, if you will. So it's not entirely inappropriate that these things are listed on a dashboard. It's just that you would rather have each of these 4 areas be a small panel in a greater dashboard, or or something else. But anyway, this is all that we have right now. And so what I was saying is I suspect that oftentimes users will come in and they'll say, wow, okay, so yeah, I didn't know that, so it already deployed a console. Okay, great. I want to go interact with console. And they click to do that. And they and they don't understand that it's no, this is about the Meshery adapter for console and whether or not the adapter is okay and how it's doing, whether or not it's connected, not about console itself. And so I suspect, yeah. Does that resonate with anyone? Has anyone experienced that themselves, that you were expecting to interface with Linkerd when you clicked here? Think about it, if you would. We've got some folks in the community who are like Nikhil and a bunch of others that who are capable in terms of improving this user experience. And so, Nikhil, this might actually be something for us to talk about. Maybe. Okay, good. All right. Thank you for this, Abishek. It's been really frustrating for me for a while. So let's go back to the meeting minutes. Get back to Satya. Thanks. I think that was like the longest introduction that anyone has ever had to give. Guys, sorry, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. All right, so enough from me. Who's up next?
We could talk about mesh sync.
Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, that's a big topic, and if Adeep is here, I think we could have a good discussion around it.
Arif, are you here?
I don't see him.
If he's on. I did poke him just a little bit ago, and he was offline, so I don't.
Okay. I guess the first thought is, like, we're starting with Istio, and that's fine. We have Go-based APIs and client sets for the rest of the service meshes. I know Linkerd runs Golang-based control plane, so it should have something ideally. But what about what is it? Kongs?
Yeah.
I forget what it is. Or yeah, all the other ones, like the whole security mesh and NSM and everything.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be thinking of this in the wrong way, but let me ask you this, or let me present this question. Is the language of the control plane significant in so much as, or like in context of mesh sync, is mesh sync only concerned with interfacing with Kubernetes and synchronizing with Kubernetes objects and understanding?
The language is important just to import the types. Otherwise, we'll have to look at their CRDs and build our own data structures, and that means maintenance will be a pain. I mean, it's not too bad, but we'll always have to keep up with the versions. So if we had an official one, that would be a lot easier. I don't know. I mean, it's worth looking at what Solo has, because I think they built their own, like before Istio came with the formal API set. They had built their own, and it wasn't even like complete. But that's the thing that I'm worried about, is we're going to end up that way. Is that we have to maintain each of these API data structures.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a sustaining issue that we have, a burden that we carry with each of the adapters today.
Mm-hmm.
So, to answer your, okay, I guess there's a couple of things in here. One, to answer your question, and curiously, it should be the case that our landscape would help us answer this.
Mm.
So, and you're right, like Linkerd's control plane is in Go. Now, we just talk about the primary language on each of these, which doesn't explicitly say what the goal. I don't know of a control plane that is not written in Go. I do know. I think Ambassador. So Ambassador doesn't count as a service mesh, but
yeah,
I think they got a lot of Python running around there.
Yeah, I'm assuming Go is the easiest, just because of all the that it's a best fit for Kubernetes. So if there is a case that there's no official API client, then we'll have to do something. Like Istio didn't have the API client set, so Aspen Mesh had created one, Neeraj had created one, which they merged into Istio, and then they started supporting it from Istio's end. So something like that will again be a a sustenance issue or a maintenance issue. If, let's say, Linkerd 2 doesn't have the official client, the client Go supported data structures or whatever you want to call it, uh, like the data structures that implement the object interface, runtime object interface.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting thought because I guess, yeah, I hadn't considered that in context of mesh sync that mesh sync would necessarily be interfacing with the control planes. There certainly is the need to, stay abreast of changes that happen within each mesh, communicating with those control planes direct, like particularly the world isn't just Kubernetes. The adapters themselves are, as they interface with each mesh, they're still doing it primarily in context of Kubernetes. It's typically the case that they're sending either imperatively or declaratively. They're interfacing with Kubernetes, which then affects that particular mesh. Say a little bit more about the thought process that you were having about. This was about hey, beyond looking at for example, Istio's custom resource virtual service, and speaking to Kubernetes about it. It was, or give an example use case if you would.
Yeah, so we're watching with Istio, we're watching the virtual services and the other custom resources, right? And the watchers, like Adeep had mentioned, was that there's two types of clients. You have a version client, and you basically have an untyped client. So there's a typed version client, which is something like how you have it, the deployments, and in Istio's case, they have their APIs that they've defined. But if we're going down that road for Istio, and which makes sense, but I'm just thinking about other service meshes. How much work is? I don't know if there is an alternative to this. We might just have to bite the bullet and do that. But we should identify all the meshes and whether they have the type clients or not.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's the only thought. So, yeah, if they were using something like Operator SDK, they would always generate the scaffolding for the typed objects and the client. But how would that work for, say, Octane or NSM or whoever else is doing the same traffic management features or whatever that we're trying to abstract?
Right.
I don't know how we watch these resources without defining data structures for them. If they must be defining them, but if they took Istio's route, that's going to be super ugly and hard to interface with. If they did it cleanly, like Istio wasn't necessarily for Kubernetes, but some of these were Kubernetes first, then it'll be a lot easier. So we need to identify if um, they have all these APIs exposed through some GitHub repository or whatever.
It's a good exercise, even just, and we've been able to, I don't know, circumvent this particular concern based on the life cycle, the way in which we were approaching life cycle management, which was really missing half of what we needed to address. Yeah, because just because we go interface with Helm doesn't mean that we're going to support a brownfield deployment or intelligently discover the objects in the environment. Yeah, in that regard, so a couple of comments there. Like in that regard, so just as you'd commented in the past that like, hey, getting economies of scale by doing Envoy-specific things with Envoy's pervasive use in the data plane, that like you'd mentioned Octarine as an example and Citrix as another, that are these are Istio service meshes, or they're based on Istio.
Oh, I see.
Which helps, or there's economies of scale there.
Okay.
Istio is, I think, as some of us know, is shifting away from supporting Helm and just the issue with them just support, like pushing and supporting Istio CTL as the as the main way to deploy it, is I don't believe that the Istio Go client is very robust.
I mean, they're not pushing just Istio CTL, right? Istio operator is the primary one, so you can create the custom resource either through Istio CTL or you can do it yourself. So it could be programmatic too, or manually created, because it's the spec is laid out and they have exposed that spec in their operator repository. So I mean, we don't care about that. They'll always have the virtual service objects or API data structures. They'll always have the destination rule, blah blah blah, that they support. So yeah, I don't know if you're speaking from the lifecycle management side, but from mesh sync side, those APIs should exist and should be easy to watch for. So like Adeep said, the listers and watchers for them. We need a type client. If it is untyped, it has to be cast to a data structure.
Yeah.
So we always need that API data structure, which has your metadata, whatever the kind and all that information, and it implements the object interface. Because in an untyped client, you get you just get the object interface, and then you basically cast that to the right implementation of that interface.
And this is, I think, of some concepts that we were talking about previously are probably touching up against each other now with the object model that we described. Like, hey, if you're at some point, if you don't have a typed client, or when you go to cast those objects, that then it's only after that you could then intelligently, wrap some logic around it.
Yeah. Anyways, this isn't a deal breaker. I mean, I just wanted to bring it up as a sustenance thing. But we can always start with Istio and either hope for the rest of the guys to create APIs, because they would want someone to interface with their meshes. It's not just the end of the road with we created a mesh and there's nothing else you can do about it or build on top of it. So yeah, I'm certain either they'll build something, or if you can talk to them like the way we're maintaining adapters, some of them are done by their people. We could do something like that too. But definitely not a deal breaker. We can still get started. Adeep, me, and Vinayak, and whoever else is involved. We can start writing the cache and the shared informers and the cache logic.
This is a question some answers we can get from the good folks at HashiCorp or from the console team, I would think, fairly quickly. Okay. A related question, the Istio operator, is that, do you know, is that based on the operator SDK?
Yeah, one of them, Kube Builder Operator SDK.
Okay. next time, would you do me a favor? Look, take a quick peek and confirm which. It'll be of importance later.
Okay.
Thank you. Very good. All right. Next, who do we have? Who's next?
Well, I don't know if this is actually something area of concern or not, but that issue with mismatch version of Ruby has been faced by quite a lot of users. Recently, Abishek was also working on an issue and he also faced that same problem. The Ruby version means, though we are having the 2.7.0 version of Ruby, but when we move to the directory of layer 5, it itself detects 2.6.5. I don't know, or some other version.
Is that because we're like checking in the gem.lock file, or why is it so fragile?
That also I'm not able to understand because recently he asked me about that mismatch part. So I recommended him to use RVM. If that solves the issue, then we will have to check if we can document that part. Means prefer using RVM. Otherwise, we need to check if actually we are making some issue regarding the gem file or on the dependencies part because it has been faced by quite a many users.
So Nikhil, is it right? It sounds like we have two questions to address. One, should we update the documentation or our contributor documentation with a small troubleshooting area? And two, should we or should we not be checking in the .lock file? And would that even help? I guess.
Yeah. Shivai was also facing that issue a few weeks earlier. If he was up with that or not, I don't know. I forgot to get in touch with him.
Yes, I mean it's still there. I mean Chris had told me to use Ruby. I'm sorry, what was the tool name?
RVM.
I downloaded that tool. Yeah, I'm sorry.
RVM is it?
Yeah, RVM.
Okay.
Yeah, Ruby Manager. I downloaded that, but even that didn't work. I had removed Ruby, like the existing Ruby, from my laptop, and I installed RVM and I installed the latest Ruby version using RVM. But it still gave me that issue when it came to the Nokogiri gem. That didn't allow me to run, to be able to run the Layer 5 website or even the Meshery website now.
Then Shivai, did you use RVM to?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So finally, were you able to run it or is it
No,
still?
I still couldn't.
Oh, okay. Actually, when I faced that issue, I tried a couple of many different ways, and the last one which I remember was to remove all the instances of Ruby after updating from 2.65 to 2.70 and then again installing RVM a couple of times as I remember. And finally, I was able to get rid of all the errors.
Okay, I'll then try to uninstall RVM again because, like as you said that I had uninstalled all versions of Ruby or even any dependency files that were there. I
Uh,
installed Ruby again. I installed RVM, but even then it was giving me errors. So probably I'll again just try to
yeah,
what.
do set the default version after installing RVM for the Ruby.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Do set the default version for Ruby after installing RVM.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, there is a command to do so.
sure.
So I guess it will
Got
help.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess Nikhil, even I had connected with you regarding same issue, right?
Yeah. You can try that too on setting the default version for using Ruby. That is 2.7.0.
All right, yeah, I'll do.
Then
Very good. And then And then, as is obligatory, as Satya just suffered this earlier, anyone who joins any of the calls for the first time gets to go through a bit of a quick introduction, and so Keith, welcome to the Meshery development call. Please say a few words just to kind of introduce, to get to know the crew a bit.
Thanks, Lee. My name is Keith Kessler. I build software for a living. I just wanted to see what was going on with Meshery since the last time I spoke to Lee, which has been a few weeks, and I've been kind of watching the Slack channel evolution. So my calendar is free for the moment, so I figured I'd jump in and just see how y'all are doing.
Oh, nice. Oh, very good. Oh, very good. Right. I'm withholding all sarcasm. Very, very nice to thank you for joining, Keith. Very nice to have Keith. Keith has actually, it's great that he's. I suspect you might have some insights as to some of the troubles that we're kind of covering here. These are not foreign concepts for you at all. And so we're just, we're part of our challenge today. We're kind of talking about this notion of mesh sync. And so it's just the notion that, Meshery as a management plane, as management software, will always be, it's third party to the actual service mesh that's doing its functionality. And so operators are, likely to walk over to the mesh itself, update its config. And then Meshery, as an out-of-band piece of management software, wouldn't necessarily be aware of those changes. So the mechanics by which, Meshery, is continually staying in sync is. So you've only solved that nut, or cracked that nut. I'm not sure how many times.
Yeah, I guess just for everyone else on the call. So I've built some products that have done things from infrastructure automation and lifecycle management to some capabilities related to service catalog aggregation from entities like Amazon or VMware, hybrid clouds. And then today I run services that do application and infrastructure and container host monitoring. And so I think you're right, subscribing to the frequency and understanding the integration points between the different systems that are changing, and how do you build a real-time service model versus keeping that information for querying later. That's not real-time specific, is something I deal with pretty frequently. So I definitely listen to the pain points that everyone was talking about on this call, and I think dealing with so many vendors trying to understand how they're going to solve it, which unfortunately isn't going to be the same, is something that you just have to deal with it when you're building a product that really manages a full ecosystem of capabilities across a lot of different vendors.
Yeah. From my perspective, hey, that part of that pain that you go through in addressing that particular challenge is why it is that people find value in the management software itself, because you're overcoming that pain. So very good. Nice to have Keith on the call. All right, Nikhil, I suspect that was anything else? And then who's next? Naveen. It might be good to hear from you.
So last week the blog is up. So I guess it was pending in the last development meeting. I guess it was in notes, like a blog was upcoming. So the blog is there, the PR. I'll add the link to the PR in the meeting minutes. So please review that. And along with that, I have started working on the next thing that is traffic split, testing about traffic split. So what we are going to do is use the Learn Layer 5 repository and create 3 services of that, and try to send a request to a random service which will route to these 3 services and assign weight or something to that. and we will assess that whether the traffic that goes to these apps like follows the SMI conformance or not, like whether it is SMI conformant or not. So that is for like this week.
Naveen, and okay, a little bit of context for others, but also a question Naveen said. So for others, the part of the conformance tooling that we're building into Meshery for service mesh interface means that Meshery will be, well, hopefully the canonical SMI, implementation validator or the conformance tool for that project. There are 4 specs inside of SMI. One of them is called traffic split. And in order to validate whether or not a given service mesh has implemented according to spec, Naveen will be developing a set of tests asserting particular test cases or making particular assertions using a relatively new sample app called Learn Layer 5 as the workload to test. And so, Naveen, I was previously just taking a stab in the dark that there might be upwards of 10, maybe 20 tests per spec across those 4 specs. And so, in the range of somewhere like 40, 50 tests, something like that. How, for traffic split, are you considering that there's kind of 3 tests total?
No, I was saying like there were 3 services that we would give route to. So first we will just send all the traffic. Like we should have ideally like at least 5 tests, I guess. Like first one should be asserting when the traffic should go to entirely to service A, service B, service C, and when it should be distributed evenly. And like there are various aspects of the spec that needs to be tested.
Within traffic split, right now it looks like it might be about 5 different types of tests.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. How this is the second spec that you're going after, right?
Yeah, so traffic access is like complete, but we can add tests later on, like maybe in a week or 2 when all 3 are like traffic metrics, traffic access, and traffic split are complete. So traffic specs is basically just asserting traffic specs, which is, by the way, the 4th like a 4th SMI the 4th part of the 4th pillar of SMI. So it is just checking whether a specific CRD is defined by service mesh or not. So there we don't have any problem. Like it is complete. It was completed when we just set up the repository and started writing test. So the traffic split and traffic access will have like more number of test cases as we move along.
Oops. How far off is that estimation in your mind that it's between 10 to 20?
Yeah, I guess by this week we would be able to do traffic metrics, and by the next week I guess traffic metrics traffic split. By this week we would be able to do traffic split. By the next week we would be able to do traffic metrics, and by the next week I guess we would have covered all the test cases of all we would have to configure and write configuration for each test case and assert the logic there. So maybe in 3 weeks, we would have fully fledged SMI conformance testing tool, and maybe in a few days we can just integrate it with the adapters.
Very good. Actually, that was a poorly phrased question. What I meant to ask was, how many? What's your estimation as to the total number of tests per spec that we might?
I don't know. I'll have to nitpick the test cases of each spec.
Okay, fair enough. But since we're on the topic of delivery, you can go ahead and sign in blood if you like, right here, for when you will have this completed. I think everyone heard him say 3 weeks. We are recording the call, so just initials will do. That'll work. Okay, good. It's good progress so far. We're going to make quite a bit of noise about this. I've been talking to folks already. So, all right, very good. Any questions for Naveen on this? We got time for one more update, probably.
Please go through the PR too, and Kush, by the way, also have that, the blog. So please go through that too. Like, we have 2 blog posts already.
Speaking of Kush, any updates?
I think Nikhil just sent a link of the issue in which
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to talk regarding that.
Sure.
If you can open that link and share this. The issue was regarding creating sublinks for the tabs on the settings page.
Right.
So the description states that we need to change the route to add slashes instead of using hash for the sublink. So if we add a slash for the path, then we need to create new pages for that. And as per the page that we are having, instead of creating that, using hash is better, because all the tabs are in the same page, and we don't need to navigate to a different page. So we don't need to populate a hash and create a new page for each tab. That will break the format of creating a page, I guess. So that won't fit. Instead, having the hash is working fine. I guess the issue that you were talking about in the description is with the performance tab. On submitting the preferences, the page gets reload and navigates to the environment tab on the settings page. I guess that's the issue you were mentioning. So I came up with that, and I saw the code, and I got the area where that thing is happening. So if we can fix that, then that issue will be resolved.
No, actually, that piece of code was added intentionally because there was a need of refreshing the page to get the latest props from the server. So what we were thinking is that if we could have a separate anchor tab for each of the following subtabs, then we won't need such a such a hot fix, or I should say a do-over.
Okay, as for I think on saving means on submitting the preferences, there is an on change function which will automatically save the props. I mean, call the props and say update the value. I haven't checked that part, if the props get updated and the value is reflected or not. I will check that after changing it. If it sets it, if the value is updated, then I guess we are good to use the hash value for the submit. Because adding the slash to the pages route means we have to create new pages for each tab, and even for the subsections.
So today we're not using React routing. Is that right?
No, we are using React routing, but basically, if we are creating a new page, means like we are navigating to a settings page, it has a dedicated page under the pages section in the UI. So for few of the pages like management and the adapters, settings, performance, they have a dedicated pages created. But since the tab section is a means same page thing, same page tool. So it gets reloaded when we switch to a different tab. The component, the different component gets called, and the page gets re-rendered automatically on switching to a different tab. So we don't need to create a different page for it.
Okay. Well, okay. So of the two challenges that we're facing, one is navigating the user to not only a specific tab within a component, but that we've got like sort of two levels of a menu system. And so it's navigating them to that. Here, let me, I didn't realize I wasn't sharing the screen. Let me share. So there's a navigation issue, a navigation question, but then there's also the ability to refresh individual components without refreshing the entire page, right? Those are the two challenges that we have. And Nikhil, you're thinking, I mean, right now, one of the challenges we've come around with the, creating with the use of anchors and navigating based on an anchor. But that second challenge around reloading in individual components data, right now the thinking is we might be able to do that by using the onChange function. Is that right?
Yeah, we can. I didn't check that part, that the value of the pros are not updating or not. I will check that also. If that works, then I guess we are good to use the anchor value. Everything will work. I've checked by directly putting the URL with the anchor value, and it gets navigated to the required tab.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. We're at top of hour. Anyone have anything else urgent before we sign off for the day? Nice. No, good. Kush, you there? Okay, good. Yeah, Abishek, thanks. We'll if you like, feel free to self-assign that auto discovery issue. I can't wait for you to work on that.
Sure. If you can give me a couple of days, I can, let's say today or tomorrow, probably I'll do it.
Okay, very good, very good. And Kush, it's not beyond me that you narrowly escaped an update today, so we'll get you next time. Okay, all right, fair enough. Thanks everybody. It's nice to see you all. It's nice to harass some of you. So
Thank you, Lee.
okay, bye guys. Talk to you later.
Bye.